A very good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give us another minute, not a minute, maybe another 30 seconds or so, because I can see more and more people joining the webinar as we speak. So I'll be rude. Because I'll be silent for another 20, 30 seconds before we do introductions and get started. I hope everyone is doing well this somewhat blustery day, certainly in the west coast of Scotland. It's a blustery day, but when is it not a blustery day in the west coast of Scotland? Okay, I think we'll get started, and more and more people will join as we go along because I'm conscious of time of the day. So yeah, firstly, a very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Association for Cultural Enterprises latest free webinar, where we're going to be sharing with you some of the data and insights and findings from the 2024 Cultural Enterprises Benchmarking Study. For those of you who don't know me, and I'm conscious there'll be some of you, I'm Gordon Morrison, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Association, so I'm the one to blame for this webinar being on today. I'm delighted to say that I am joined today by the brilliant Diana Materna, who is the Associate Director of Global Insights Agency BVA BDRC. I'm so used to saying that now, I can say it fast. BVA BDRC, there we go. Who expertly undertook the research work for the benchmarking study for us, and Diana indeed was the co-author of the report. I think some of you might know Diana. She's a reasonably familiar face to the sector because she's the individual who runs the Mystery Visitor Programme for BVA BDRC, and I think more than 100 visitor attractions across the UK take part in that programme. There's more than 400 visits a year, so some of you, I'm sure, are involved in that programme. It should fill you with a great deal of confidence that we're in safe hands, the fact that we've got Diana with us today. In fact, I'll probably just refer to her as my safety net for the rest of the presentation today. We're only here for a short time. I'm conscious of that today, so we're going to get cracking on providing you with the data and insights. We are actively welcoming questions today, so anyone who has a question for either Diana or myself, please use the Q&A function ideally, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. You can use the chat function as well, but Q&A would be the ideal one. And hopefully we'll get through as many questions as we can. There's a lot of people on the call today, so apologies if we don't have time to get through every question. It's probably unlikely that we will, but what we will endeavour to do, especially because we know that there are going to be some questions that are probably asking for precise detail that might involve us burying into data a bit more, we will look to follow up with a Q&A document post-webinar, answering as many of the questions as we possibly can. And I should also say as well, we are recording today's webinar, and all attendees who are booked on will receive a link to the recording and a link to the slides from the presentation. So don't worry too much about note-taking or remembering specific details. Sit back, relax, just enjoy the stats, basically. So I'm going to kick off with a wee preamble about the study, providing you with some of the details about the purpose of the study, who we reached out to, the number of responses, and indeed some details about what's in the report, because I'm conscious that not all of you who are joining the webinar will have had the chance to see the actual findings up to now. I'll then hand over to Diana, who's going to talk about the data itself, and she'll share some of the key findings from the study. That'll really be the interesting bit that Diana will cover off, and then I'll round off with what I see as some of the key takeaways from the study, and hopefully we'll have a bit of time for questions as well. So Diana, could you click onto the next slide for me, please? Thank you very much indeed. So firstly, why did we undertake this work? Well, I should say it is the association's biggest and most comprehensive benchmarking study that we've undertaken ever in our history. And the aim really was a very simple one. We quite simply wanted to establish useful benchmarks for the sector and provide commercial benchmarks, I should say, and provide meaningful, practical insights that support and inform you with your commercial, your operational, and your strategic decision making. So the full report itself is a member benefit because we're a membership organisation. So if you wanted to see the full report, you do have to be a member of the association. I hasten to add that we are a charity, so we do offer bursary memberships to those who might be struggling to afford the membership fee. So if that's of interest, you can look at our website and see that. And also, as a charity, we do want to support the wider sector beyond our members. So that's why we've hosted this webinar today to provide some of the key insights beyond those of you who just exist within our membership. To gather the data and insights that we needed, we sent a very detailed 60 plus question survey out around 335 member organisations within the association, and the fieldwork itself was conducted, sorry, next slide I should say, Diana. And the fieldwork was conducted between, oh no, not yet, sorry. The fieldwork was conducted between April and June this year. The data collected for the most part covers the financial year from April 23 to March 24, with the key exception being visitor numbers, which we took from the calendar year 2023. And in terms of responses, I'm delighted to say that overall we got 179 responses, so that's a response rate of 50%, but crucially, 75 organisations answered each and every question within the survey. So we actually have got a pretty robust data set to work from. So that's a good start point. So next slide, please, Diana. For those of you who haven't been able to access the full report, just so you're aware, the study provides data and insights across all the things that you can see there on the screen, ranging from visitor numbers to dwell time within venues, visitor spend, average transaction value, sources of commercial income, retail benchmarks, catering benchmarks, venue hire benchmarks, etc. And indeed, it goes all the way to average salaries for management roles and front of house roles within our membership as well. And as well as providing the hard data, what we wanted to do was we wanted a report that contains some useful insights for you. So some case studies from organisations who are excelling in some of the fields covered within the report, and also some commercial opportunity takeaways are contained within the report itself that we've identified when we were doing the number crunching. We could see some areas where there was opportunities for the membership and the wider sector to do more with regards to commercial opportunities. And I'll touch upon some of those case studies and some of those key takeaways before we wrap up today. But I think just now what I'll do is I'll hand over to Diana, who's going to present some of the most relevant key findings from the study. So Diana, over to you.
Thank you, Gordon, and thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today and to present our hard work on this. And I'm also even more delighted to see so many people joining us today. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Okay, so before diving into the findings, I'd like to talk through a few caveats and some nuances just to ensure that the data we'll be showing is interpreted correctly. So first of all, in terms of base sizes, in order to incentivize questionnaire completion, most of the questions within the survey were optional to answer. So we had around 51 optional questions and around 10, 11 mandatory ones. And this means that in some places, responses are based on lower number of respondents. And where this is the case, you will see it highlighted very clearly in red at the bottom of the page. But generally, when questions are answered by all or partial respondents, results are quite robust. When answered by very few respondents, they should be treated more as indicative rather than conclusive. Then we have the median averages. So throughout this report, we tended to use median averages. So this is the middle number in a set of values ordered from smallest to largest as opposed to mean averages, which is the number you get by dividing the sum of a set of values by the number of values in the set. So why have we done this? For two reasons mainly. First of all, it ensures that the average represents the membership overall, rather than just a small number of very large organizations that may have inflated the score. So basically, this helps make it more realistic. And second of all, the survey relies on organizations to accurately input a very large amount of information. And this can make it more prone to error to even the most attentive respondent. So using a median average protects us from these mistakes by effectively excluding any outliers. So for these reasons, the median average is typically lower than the mean average. So we would caution against comparisons to other sources. And finally, we have the members' weighting. So in most cases, results represent the average score across all members. So each member is given equal weighting. However, in some cases, so for example, visitor age or visitor origin, we have also weighted responses by admissions or by turnover. And we have done this to provide an additional dimension when viewing the results. Okay, so let's dig into the data. We'll start with organization profiles. So in terms of organization types taking part in the survey, we can see that museums were predominant at 36%. And this, when combined with the art galleries, which is 15%, this made up around half of the respondents to the survey. The rest is made up of a range of organizations. So we have historic houses, we have gardens, parks, and zoos, performing art venues, religious premises, and others. In terms of location of the participating members, we can see that the majority are based in England at 73%, but also a good coverage from the rest of the regions as well. So London has the highest representation in terms of locations at 27%, and this is followed by Scotland at 17%. Between them, we have almost half of all organizations at 44%. Following this, the South regions make up a further quarter. This is 24% between Southwest and Southeast, and the rest are generally spread across the UK. Now we'll be looking at the visitor profile, admissions, and visitor spend. So in terms of annual admissions, Culture Enterprises members attract a wide range of visitor numbers, which kind of underlies their diversity. 1 in 6 attracted fewer than 50,000 visitors in 2023, whilst a further 1 in 5 attracted more than 1 million visitors. The median admissions average, so this is the midpoint, was just short of 250,000, and 241,000 visitors, with the highest number of visitors at 6.4 million, which is for a multi-site organization. Cultural Enterprises members also attract a range of age groups to the venues. At the average venue, nearly half, so we have around 45% of visitors are aged under 44 years old, with a third aged between 45 and 64, and a further 1 in 5 over 65 years old. So when weighing age profile by visitor admissions, so this means that sites with more visitors have more influence, the profile is considerably younger, with over half age around 44 or under. This will in part be driven by larger organizations within this survey being more family-oriented. Although it should be noted that post-pandemic, age profiles have been younger across the sector generally. The average cultural enterprises venue attracts a clear majority of UK visitors at 70%, but this drops significantly to just half, so 52%, when weighed by admissions. This shift is driven by large venues in tourist-heavy parts of Scotland and London generally. The median dwell time at venues is about 2 hours. However, we can see that there is significant variation across some of the venues. So 1 in 4 generate a dwell time of just 1 hour, and 2 in 5 more than 2 hours. And perhaps not completely surprising that we can see that gardens, parks, and zoos tend to generate the longest dwell times at an average of 3 hours and 10 minutes, perhaps due to how much there is to see and walk around. Most venues charge for at least some part of their experience. So we have 81% that charge for at least something, and a small majority at 59% that charge for entry. 20% also charge for exhibitions or special events or features. And of those that charge, it's really telling that fixed pricing is by far the most common. We can see this at 80%, despite there being other options available out there in terms of pricing. So this is followed by variable pricing, some distance behind. We can see this at 21%, and only 8% currently apply dynamic pricing. The majority of visitors to cultural enterprises venues tend to be walk-ups, although maybe around 2 in 5 tend to book in advance also. In terms of ticket prices, of those that charge, the average adult ticket price is £13.37. However, this ranges from as low as £3.5 to as high as £33. For children, the average ticket price is around £6, although 22% also admit children for free. 41% of visitors made a purchase on site, with the average spend per visitor being around £5, and the average transaction value around £13. However, there is a huge range of spending either side of these averages. So we can see that for nearly half, spend is less than £5, but for around 13%, this is over £20. Almost all cultural enterprises organizations accept donations, with an average suggested amount of around £4.74, although around 2 in 5 suggest less than that. However, it's worth pointing out that the median average donation is a lot less than suggested at £1.4. For a minority of 15%, this rises to £5 and over. Next up, we'll be looking at some findings around turnover, investment, and innovation. So the vast majority, we have 95% of organizations generate turnover from commercial activity, which makes up almost 40% of their annual income. So this is hugely telling for the sector of how important this is for the sector. And given the funding challenges within the sector, it's only going to become more and more important. Fundraising, grants, permanent ticketing, and membership are also sources for the majority, with permanent ticketing being the largest source beyond commercial activity. Grants are also a strong source of turnover, and particularly amongst the smaller organizations. And membership, although this is offered by a majority, it provides a small proportion of income. The median annual turnover from commercial activities in 2023-24 was just short of 1 million at £936,000. However, there is a wide range across organizations. So 30% with turnover less than £250,000 and 34% at 2.5+ million pounds. The most common area of turnover was retail at 46%, and this is followed by venue hire at 19% and then catering at 18%. Perhaps unsurprisingly, maintenance was the most common area of capital investment in 2023-24, accounting for around a third of investment overall. 66% indicated they invested in commercial, comprising of an average of 15% of all capital investment. Of those that invested in commercial, the majority invested less than £100,000, with 28% investing between £100,000 and £500,000. We can see that a range of new innovations were also introduced by members in 2023-24. So just for a bit of context, we asked this question in the survey to provide some inspiration to the sector, as opposed to just providing data, to show what organizations are doing, how they are generating new revenue, and just to show that the sector is not standing still, but is constantly innovating, and we're sure that there is even more to be done in the future. So perhaps unsurprising again that new products and new revenue streams were the most common commercial innovations. So in terms of new types of products, we can see areas around new retail items and ranges, new exhibition range products, food ranges, etc. But it's interesting that we are seeing the sector beginning to utilize premium products or new ticketing systems. So in terms of premium products, we've received some examples such as limited edition collections, artwork, tours such as after hours, or flexi tickets. And then we also have the introduction of dynamic pricing at 9%. Okay, now we'll look at some of the key findings around commercial income generation. So we can see that nearly everyone conducts commercial activity around retail and e-commerce with a good level of profit at around 50% for both. The conversion rate is higher for retail, so we can see this at 17% compared to 1% for e-commerce. However, it's worth pointing out that this is more difficult to achieve for e-commerce. And on a positive note, the average order value is higher for e-commerce at £20 compared to £14 for retail. Then looking at the right side of the slide, we can see that the catering offer is a bit lower with around 3/4 of sites, so 75% engaging in catering activity. However, gross profit here is looking high at 71%, so perhaps worth considering adding for whoever doesn't currently offer this. And we can also see the average transaction value at £8. Most venues also engage in activity around venue hire and events. We can see this at 89% with a high average gross profit of 85%. And it's interesting to see that the highest proportion of events tend to be private. So things like weddings, celebrations, corporate events, to name a few. So this means that there are probably more opportunities out there to explore. And just wanted to share from personal experience. I was recently working on a research study for a hotel chain. And we were doing some research with event planners around their meeting and events offer. And the key finding was that there is a growing popularity and demand amongst event planners for using more, let's call them non-traditional event spaces. So not only the generic hotel meeting room, for example, but something more unique. So whether this is for the event itself, or it's just for like the social moments in between breaks, they're looking more at using museums or something a bit more outdoor or something more interesting. And this is something that seems to have emerged post-pandemic. So definitely an opportunity there considering the interest. And then finally, we'll look at expenditure and employees. So this is a people's industry, so it's not surprising that most expenditure is on staff and payroll. We can see this at 62%. And this is followed by repairs and maintenance, significantly behind though, at 12%. And then followed by a range of other areas that make up the expenditure, such as utilities, marketing, MPR, IT, infrastructure support, training and development, and finally rent. But it's worth pointing out there are no clear differences by organization, size, or type. The number of employees and volunteers differs considerably by organization. So around 1 in 5, so around 22%, employ 10 or fewer full-time equivalent staff, whilst a similar amount, 18%, employ over 100. And of the staff that are employed, an average of 15, so around 1 in 3, are in income-generating roles. Wanted to emphasize that volunteers clearly play a very important role within organizations, with a lot of organizations relying on them to make them viable. So the median number for unpaid volunteers at venues is 30, and 1 in 4 organizations with over 100. Notably, volunteer numbers do not appear to increase when an organization passes the 100,000 visitor threshold. Looking at average salaries, we can see that the average management salary is £35,000, with the highest being reported at £57,000. Front of house staff are paid significantly less, with a median average of £24,000 and the highest being at £34,000. And then finally, we've also looked at employee benefits. So organizations provide a range of employee benefits, with the most common being flexible hours at 81%. Then this is followed by discounted meals and drinks at 71%, free or discounted access to venues and attractions at 61%, and also enhanced pensions also at 61%. A small number of organizations provide more innovative benefits. So, for example, memberships, whether to a club or to gyms, medical cover, and incentive scheme vouchers, to name a few. So I'll hand back to Gordon now to talk you through some of the key takeaways from what we've shared today.
Thanks very much indeed for that. I mean, first thing I suppose, what I would say before moving on to the takeaways is I'm sure for most of us on the call today, the results of this study are not overly surprising. There's nothing too shocking in there, but hopefully it does help set some of these benchmarks for you, so that you understand and realize where you are sitting with the various pieces of information that we've delivered. I mean, to me, it is absolutely not surprising at all. For example, that commercial income now makes up nearly 40% of all income coming into the sector. I think that is natural, considering what is the overall picture for the sector just now. Diana mentioned the funding challenges that the sector is facing. Commercial activity is only going to become more and more important, and I'm sure we will see that emerge through future studies that we undertake. So as Diana mentioned, we wanted to not just provide you with the data itself. The report itself includes some practical insights as well, and part of what's included within the full report are what we've called a top 10 takeaways list, which are the sort of key commercial opportunities that emerged when we analysed the data in depth. There are a few that I want to share with you in today's webinar. So 3 that I've picked out in particular. Firstly, I think it is really fascinating to see that the vast majority of those who do charge for admission are using a fixed price model. There's under 30% of the sector using either variable, differential, or dynamic pricing. Now, I can completely understand that, given the uproar about dynamic pricing, primarily from old men like me, when we find out how expensive Oasis tickets were going to be using dynamic pricing, it's perhaps not too surprising that most in the sector are steering away from the utilisation of dynamic pricing. But what is clear when we analyse the data through this study is that there is definitely an opportunity for more in the sector to explore more flexible pricing models, because there is evidence that these do actually increase revenue. And of course, when you use that model as well, you can, it's not just about charging more. You can also charge cheaper prices, get more accessible pricing at less busy times of the year, for example, or even less busy periods during the season. Secondly, we're clearly not that good at getting donations, and that's something we should explore a wee bit more as a sector. Why we're not great at that. The average donation sits at just over £1, despite the fact we ask for considerably more than that from the public. However, the study did show that there were some sites in particular that are way outperforming that consistently, with an average donation, for example, of over £5 or more. And those that were doing that were using an effective combination of tactical donation box placement. They were using very simple, effective, and emotive messaging on site and online, and they were also utilising their staff more. So staff training, specific staff training in garnering donations. and they were seeing quite transformative results back there. So that's an area I think there's opportunity for us to focus on as a sector. And thirdly, and this is definitely probably the key one that I would urge everyone to consider, is the use of premium products and experiences. So in the 23-24 year, the survey showed that only 1 in 5 cultural enterprises members were offering some form of premium experience or premium product, whether that is an exclusive tour, an exclusive experience, or a high-end retail product, for example. And the data showed, when we delved into it, that premium experiences, even in a cost of living crisis, are doing remarkably well for venues, and they can generate significant revenue. And not only can they generate significant revenue, they are fairly low cost for you to do as well. So the message here is get creative. Think about what you can do that is unique, that is special, that you can monetize. It is all about storytelling, ultimately, how you sell that story, tell your story well, you can charge well for it. And there is definitely, despite the fact that we are still in a cost of living crisis, there is definitely an audience out there who are immune to the cost of living crisis, who are willing to pay top dollar for high quality experiences. Next slide, please, Diana. The report also contains some case studies as well. I mentioned that. So I just wanted to touch upon a few of these as well, and show you what some of those case studies are. The first relates to the effective use of differential pricing. I mentioned differential pricing already at Castle Howard, and how the introduction of 3 different pricing bands at different times of the year has really helped to maximise revenue, and also distribute the visitors across a wider range of time slots at that particular venue. So it's evidence of variable pricing working, I suppose. Next one, please, Diana. The second one concerns the introduction of exclusive after-hours packages, tour packages at the wonderful Foundling Museum. If you've not been, go to the Foundling Museum, it's great. Which has really seen the venue hire space that would otherwise potentially have been completely empty. It's being well utilised, and it's being utilised by an audience that wouldn't normally use it, an audience that's looking for something different and something enriching for their experience. And so again, it's evidence that the developing unique experiences can deliver commercial returns for your organisation and diversify your audience as well. And then next slide, please, Diana. Then something completely different. We didn't really touch upon this in the webinar so far, but I think it's a really telling point. The study demonstrated that staff turnover is pretty high in our sector, higher than the overall average that you see in other parts out with our industry. So we deliberately picked a case study from the brilliant Titanic Belfast. I'm sure many of you have been to Titanic Belfast, a wonderful cultural attraction in Northern Ireland. And the case study here explains how they've introduced a comprehensive staff benefits package and put an awful lot of effort into staff well-being, staff happiness, making their staff feel good. And that has actually led to them having a retention rate of 98% of permanent staff staying there. And that has huge benefits for the organisation overall, not just in terms of it costs a lot of money to replace staff, but also just that consistency of experience, delivering a great experience for visitors. So those are just a few of the case studies that we have. There are more contained within the report itself, as there are the other 7 of the top 10 tips, but I'm going to remain a tease, I've decided, and just share those few with you just now, mainly because I'm looking at the time, and we are almost out of time already. I can't believe it, we're almost out of time just now. We do have a little bit of time for questions. We did get, thanks Diana, we did get one in advance that I think, it's always great to get questions in advance. In fact, we got a few questions in advance, but the one that I want to focus on, I thought was a brilliant question, that was asked to us by Merrin Kidd at the Bishop's Palace and Gardens, who asked, as many of us are in the business planning cycle for 2025, could you suggest your opinion in the context of the data on what the biggest risk and the biggest opportunity is for heritage and cultural entities next year? I think that's a great question. I really do. And from my perspective, looking at the data and also just looking at the overall picture for the sector, I think that I've touched upon the really challenging economic environment that the sector is in just now, and the fact that funding cuts are continuing to be an absolute blight on the sector. I think the big challenge, the biggest risk here for us, is that we therefore dial everything back as a sector. We don't invest. We don't try and improve. The data in the survey showed, and the studies showed, that those who are investing in the commercial opportunities, those who are investing in commercial marketing, for example, are seeing significant rewards from doing that. So I think the risk here is that we pull back too much and we become a bit too cautious as a sector at a time when we need to maximize our commercial opportunities. So I'd say that's probably, for me, the biggest risk. And in terms of the biggest opportunity, I've touched upon it already, but there are new commercial opportunities for us to explore, and that premium experiences one is one that I keep touching on every conversation I have with members. That is a low cost opportunity actually for us to develop that can have really significant financial rewards for cultural organisations. There's brilliant examples out there. The Foundling Museum's just one of them. There are other organisations that do wonderful premium experiences and are benefiting from delivering those experiences. So I would say that's a huge opportunity. But think broad. Commercial is not just retail. It's not just catering. It's not just venue hire. But it's much wider than that. So broaden your horizons and look at what other opportunities are there. I mentioned it's all about what stories you tell. So I would say that's absolutely crucial to that. In terms of the other questions, Diana, there is one question in the question box that maybe you can answer for us. It's in the catering spend per head at £3. Is that spend per cafe customer, spend per visitor?
Spend per head. I'll have to double check the questionnaire to see exactly how we worded that question.
We will come back on that one then. That's what I would suggest that we do. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. I'm really conscious that we've actually only got 2 minutes left. If anyone does have any other questions on the back of the presentation today or on the report itself, then please do put them through to us, because we will pull together a Q&A document that we'll be quite happy to share across all attendees at the webinar. What I would say is that this is just step one when it comes to our benchmarking study. This is the first of the large-scale benchmarking studies that we're going to undertake. We are committed to continue to deliver these studies, and the insights are only going to improve year upon year. So, for example, for the next study, we'll be able to show percentage changes from the last study, so we can identify positive or negative trends, for example, within the sector. We've not been able to do that this year because this is our first study. And I should say that anyone who's a member of the association can take part in this study, and it is completely free of charge to do so. And it's our aim that this is going to be the most comprehensive and well-utilised benchmarking report across the cultural sector moving forward. So please, please, please do get involved with us. If you want to know more about the study, more about our work, if you're not a member and you want to talk about that with us, or even if you can't become a member, but you desperately want to get more information about the benchmarking that we've done, please, please, please drop me a line. The email address is there for you on the screen just now. And similarly, I'm sure that Diana more than happy to take any questions from you as well. I'm afraid that's probably us out of time just now. A big thank you to Diana and indeed the amazing team at BVRC as well for their support with the work and of course for your presentation today. There were a few sound issues on occasion, but I think we got there in the end. So thank you very much indeed, Diana. We will be sending a feedback form out to all of you straight away. So please take a few minutes to help us, help me actually improve. And I would also just quickly plug things. Go into our events page on the website for details about lots of other more interesting events that we've got coming up over the coming weeks and months, including our AGM, which doesn't sound that exciting, but it is on the 21st of November. And of course, our signature conference, 12th and 13th of March in Liverpool, which is all about helping the cultural sector become more financially self-sustaining, which I think we all know and is completely backed up with this study, is going to be increasingly important going forward. Thank you all for your time today, and we look forward to catching up with you all soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, everyone.